What is going on, geeks? No Jive from the Geek Week here, and we are back with another review. Well, the time has finally come. Now, full disclosure, we did have a poll on the channel for a watch-along video, and this film was the winner of said poll, so we will get that video coming out as soon as possible. Now, that being said, today we'll be diving into the latest and quite possibly the final masterpiece from the legend among animators and storytellers, Hayao Miyazaki, and that of course is The Boy and the Heron. Now, Hayao Miyazaki is a man that needs no introduction, as I've talked about him and his works countless times on the channel, but why don't we give him one anyway? Better yet, why don't we just play a clip from one of my older videos? I couldn't share with you some of the most cherished moments in my life, moments that brought us to this very second. Moments like my Aunt Lisa renting Howl's Moving Castle from Blockbuster in 2005, unknowingly introducing a young anime fan to one of the greatest, if not the greatest animator ever in Hayao Miyazaki, and the love affair that would ensue with his films. Words can hardly describe the impact Miyazaki has had on me over the years, so needless to say I was over the moon to get into this film. The Boy and the Heron is a 2023 animated film produced by none other than Studio Ghibli. The title of the film is taken from the 1937 novel of the same name, written by Genzaburo Yoshino. However, it is not an adaptation of it. An absolute spectacle to watch, this film incorporates elements from all of Miyazaki's past works. Like most, this is a coming-of-age story. And like most, it's a fantasy adventure. It even has the wartime setting seen in so many of Miyazaki's films. What is drastically different, however, is the aesthetic. The Boy and the Heron, much unlike a lot of Miyazaki's other works, has a very dark tone that carries throughout the film, almost like a Grimm's fairy tale version of Alice in Wonderland. But we'll get more into that in a bit. Also, much unlike Miyazaki's previous works that depict an escape to fantasy and adventure, The Boy and the Heron speaks to creating a world without conflict with your own hands. Speaking to my side of the globe, the film did remarkably well, becoming the 5th highest grossing Japanese film of all time in the United States. On top of that, it has received numerous accolades, including the award for Best Animated Film at not only the Academy, but also the Golden Globes, as well as the British Academy for Film and Television. And that's only naming a few. Okay, I know I said the man needs no introduction, but it's Hayao Miyazaki. I had to do something. Alright, it's finally time. Let's dive in to The Boy and the Heron. As the film begins, we are introduced to a young boy named Mahito, who is awoken from his sleep due to the commotion caused by a hospital fire. It would turn out that Mahito's mother was a patient in that very hospital, and sadly, his mother Hisako would die during the accident. During all this, the Pacific War is taking place in their home city of Tokyo, and a few years later, Mahito and his father evacuate the city. Now, Mahito's father, Shoichi, owns an air munitions factory, so the Pacific War has been quite profitable for him. Oh, and as luck would have it, Shoichi remarried in the time since his wife's passing. Well, I guess luck depends on who you ask, as he remarries his late wife's sister and Mahito's aunt, Natsuko, and it is her estate that they evacuate to. While speaking with Mahito, Natsuko informs him that she will be his new mother, much to Mahito's displeasure. On top of that, she informs him that she is pregnant and he has a sibling on the way. It should come as no surprise that Mahito is not adapting to the new environment well, as we see he often dreams of his mother when he goes to sleep. While out wandering the estate, Mahito encounters a mysterious gray bird that, once followed, leads him to an old tower that's even more mysterious yet. When spotted exploring the exterior of the tower, Mahito is called back to the estate by one of the handmaidens. Once back, Mahito questions Natsuko about the strange tower. Natsuko explains to Mahito that the tower was built by her great-uncle and flourished until the day he mysteriously disappeared. Sometime after that, the tower suffered a devastating flood, and it was ordered that the entrance be sealed. So, yes, essentially she's telling him that the tower is haunted, and that he should be very weary of it. To keep up with the theme of Mahito not taking to his new environment, we see that he's constantly getting into fights with other boys at school. After one of these altercations, we see Mahito purposefully injure himself with a rock, causing a severe injury to the side of his head. At this point, it's clear that the loss of his mother is starting to affect him greatly, and he's beginning to act out more and more. While recovering from his injury, Mahito is visited by the same gray bird as before, but this time it speaks to him saying, "Save me, save me." Natsuko then would enter the room and the bird would fly away before being spotted. This would become a reoccurring theme. The next encounter would come shortly after, as the bird now entices Mahito to a lake. Again, the bird speaks to him, saying his mother is alive and that he never actually saw her body buried. This seemingly is enough to entice Mahito, as we see the bird, along with the help of some talking fish and some talking toads, almost get him to come with them. That is until, yet again, Natsuko interferes, scaring off the animals. As they leave, they tell Mahito they'll be waiting. Natsuko becomes bedridden during the pregnancy, and Mahito goes to visit her. He checks on her condition, but it's still very clear that he's not at a point of comfortability with the situation. Shortly thereafter, the bird appears a fourth time, and this time things appear to be off, as it almost looks like there's a nose protruding from the beak of the bird. At any rate, the bird taunts Mahito, then quickly flies away. This most recent encounter prompts Mahito to construct a bow of bamboo to greet the bird next time it arrives. For the fletching on his arrows, Mahito uses one of the gray bird's feathers that had dropped on the ground during one of their previous encounters. And much to Mahito's surprise, upon firing one of these arrows, he learns that it possesses magical properties, mainly being that it can fly and aim all on its own. And in typical Miyazaki fashion, it was absolutely incredible to watch. Mahito would later find a book written and left for him by his mother, and he begins to get emotional reading it. At that moment, he hears one of the handmaidens calling out for Natsuko. When Mahito learns that Natsuko went missing from the estate earlier, he agrees to join the search, stating that something is clearly wrong, realizing he also hasn't seen the gray bird in quite some time. The search leads Mahito and one of the handmaidens, Kiriko, to the mysterious tower from before, and again, he hears the voice of the bird. The bird calls for Mahito to follow him into the tower, and he does. After doing so, the bird would lead him to a person that looks exactly like his mother. Mahito is overcome with emotion and unable to hide it. But just when he reaches out to touch his mother, however, the body melts into a liquid and melts to the floor. In bad taste, the bird offers to make another one for him, enraging Mahito. Mahito draws his bow and hits the bird with one of the arrows that are infused with the magical feather, the bird's greatest weakness. Doing so exposes the bird for who he truly is. A magical birdman. And by that I do mean a man living inside a magical heron. So yeah, a magical birdman, who from this point we'll just refer to as the heron. The arrow punctures a hole in the heron's beak, taking away its ability to fly. And just as the altercation escalates, we find out the whole thing is being overseen by someone else, as we see an older man very much resembling a wizard hovering above. He says he ordered the Heron to bring Mahito to him, and at that very moment, the floor beneath them turns to liquid, as Mahito, Kiriko, and the Heron are sucked into another reality. Now seemingly alone, and in an alternate universe, a confused Mahito stumbles upon a golden gate. While inspecting the gate, Mahito is bombarded by a flock of pelicans that smash their way through, saying, "We need food, we need food." Before the flock of malnourished pelicans make a meal out of Mahito, he is rescued by a fire-wielding fisherwoman, ironically named Kiriko. And not only that, she's dressed just like the handmaiden. When Kiriko sees the tides rising on the water, she offers Mahito a place in her boat, and shortly after, her home. The two bond more and more over time, as Mahito assists Kiriko with her work, and that work being catching and selling fish to Wara Wara, bubble-like spirits that fly to the world above to be reborn. One day, after doing so, a herd of Wara Wara are attacked by a flock of pelicans, as they devour as many of the spirits as they can. The birds are warded off by fires cast by a pyrokinetic young woman named Himi, and the Wara Wara are saved. Later that night, one of the burned pelicans would visit Mahito, and with its dying breath, explains that they are desperate for food, and they only eat the Wara Wara because they were introduced to this world without any. As the pelican passes, Mahito is visited yet again by the Heron. The Heron offers to take Mahito to Natsuko, but he refuses the Heron's help, reminding the Heron that he still holds its weakness in his possession. The two seem to forever be at odds, that is, until Kiriko begins to broker a bit of camaraderie between the two of them. Now back in Mahito's reality, We see the handmaiden speaking to Shoichi, who is now distraught not only his wife, but now his son is also missing. When Shoichi mentions the tower built by Natsuko's great uncle, we learn a different origin story for the mysterious tower. The handmaidens explain that the tower was not built by Natsuko's uncle, rather found by him, as it fell from the sky. They tell Shoichi that Natsuko's uncle discovered the mysterious tower and became enamored with it, making it his home and building his estate there. The rest of the story is very much like Natsuko's rendition, with the disappearance and the flood and whatnot, but what wasn't mentioned is that for a time, when she was very young, Mahito's mother disappeared too within that very tower, before reappearing some time later. Shoichi hears these words and heads towards the tower in search of his family. Now, as previously mentioned, thanks to Kiriko, the relationship between Mahito and the bird, or the boy and the heron, sorry, I had to, begins to grow. Mahito even helps the heron plug the hole in its beak, restoring its flight. Shortly after that, the two come across the house of man-eating parakeets that block the path forward as Mahito searches for Natsuko. The heron decides to act as a distraction, drawing away the parakeets so Mahito can run past. Unfortunately, there are plenty more parakeets waiting inside, and Mahito is apprehended as he tries to get by. The parakeets are moments from eating Mahito, when suddenly, pyrokinetic Hime appears in the nick of time, rescuing him from the evil birds and bringing him back to her home. Now back at Hime's home, Mahito looks outside the front door and notices a tower that looks identical to the tower across from his estate, at which point Hime explains that they are one and the same, stating that the tower exists in many different worlds at the same time. Not long after that, Hime prepares lunch for Mahito, and the meal is exactly the way his mother used to make it. So, yes, if you aren't quite keeping up, Hime is in fact a younger Hisako, Mahito's mother. Hime tells Mahito she'll take him to Natsuko, who's in the delivery room, and the two travel to the Corridor of Time, which I absolutely loved. Absolutely, just love this element in the film. The Corridor of Time is a series of doors, each leading to alternate realities. As they reach door number 132, we look through to see Mahito's reality, as we see his father calling out to him. Suddenly, the two are spotted by parakeets as a flock come rushing in their direction. To escape, they momentarily enter Mahito's reality, along with the flock of angry parakeets, though we see as soon as the parakeets cross over, they convert back into normal birds. After the incident, they make it to the delivery room, and Mahito finally finds Natsuko. When he goes to bring her home, however, she tells him to leave, and for the first time, Mahito refers to her as his mother. The conversation is interrupted by a powerful force, as we learn Natsuko is being held by the Tower Master, the wielder of the sacred stone. The force is able to render both Hime and Mahito unconscious, as we see Mahito slip into a dreamlike state. During this dream, Mahito is visited by none other than the Tower Master, or, better yet, his grand uncle, as we see Mahito approach a man with building blocks. The blocks represent the dimension that they are currently in, and the balance of this world lies solely on the balance of these mystical blocks. The old wizard brings Mahito to the magic stone he used to create this universe, and explains that he brought Mahito to this world to succeed him. He tells him that the future of this world is entirely up to him, and it can be one of peace and prosperity, or one of destruction. The choice is Mahito's, and Mahito's alone. When Mahito sees the magic building blocks, however, he notices and states that they are imbued with evil energy, to which the wizard replies, "That is why I chose you." When Mahito finally comes to, he realizes he's been apprehended by the parakeets, and Hime is nowhere to be found. Once more, the parakeets are preparing to feast on Mahito, and once more, at the last second, he is rescued. But this time, it's the Heron that comes to his aid, taking out the parakeets keeping guard. The Heron informs Mahito that Hime is being held captive by the Parakeet King, who plans to use her as a bargaining chip with the Tower Master. The parakeets want to keep things the way they are, but as we learned, the Tower Master, or wizard, let's just say wizard, the wizard plans to leave the fate of this universe in the hands of Mahito. The Parakeet King meets with the wizard, and the wizard informs him of his intentions, to which the Parakeet King returns Hime, though he is still not satisfied with the uncertainty surrounding the universe's future. Mahito and the Heron enter the wizard's garden soon after and are met by Hime, much to the delight of Mahito. Hime says that her uncle is waiting to meet him, and the three of them head in that direction, all the while being tailed by the Parakeet King. When Hime brings Mahito before the wizard, he offers Mahito a different set of building blocks than the ones from the dream. This set of 13 blocks, not tainted by evil of any kind. Again, the wizard offers Mahito the opportunity to build his own world, one free of evil. Mahito, however, refuses the offer all the same, pointing to the scar on his head and admitting that he did it to himself, and it is proof of the evil within him. When the wizard asks if he's sure he'd rather return to a reality where people kill and rob, to which Mahito replies, he'll make friends like Hime, Kiriko, and the Heron, and together they'll get by. The wizard obliges, stating he must only stack the blocks how he see fit, then he may return to his life in his reality. Suddenly, from lurking in the shadows, the Parakeet King appears, rushing by Mahito to the blocks. The king frantically tries to stack the blocks in a formation that will balance, all the while cursing the wizard for leaving the fate of their reality to a child. The Parakeet King fails, and the blocks come crashing down, as does the universe around them, as we see a giant flood begin to destroy any and everything. The wizard bids them farewell, and the trio rush back to the corridor of time before it's too late. All the while, Kiriko rescues Natsuko and leads her to safety. Once Hime gets Mahito back to his door, she acknowledges that she knows he is her son, and she is both happy and lucky that he is. Mahito tries to warn his mother about the fire that would take her life in the future, but she is unfazed by what the future holds, and content that she has right now. Hime states that her door is different, and they embrace one last time before parting ways. Mahito, Natsuko, and the Heron all return to Mahito's reality. The Heron actually bids Mahito to forget the entire experience before flying off himself. Oh, and Kiriko is back as well as old Kiriko, the house maiden again. The Pacific War ends and 2 years pass as we see Mahito's younger brother is now born. Mahito, now a young man himself, joins his brother and his parents as they move back to Tokyo as a family. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is where our story comes to a close. As always, you guys know the drill. I can only begin to touch the surface of the story with these plot summary portions, so I could not implore you more to go experience this wonderful film for yourself if you haven't already. But with all that said, let's talk about it. Where to begin? Well, seeing as it's a Studio Ghibli film, it seems rather fitting that we start with the animation. And surprise, surprise, much like the entirety of Hayao Miyazaki's Studio Ghibli collection, The Boy and the Heron is absolutely breathtaking visually. I've ranted too many times on the channel about the importance of hand-drawn animation and how the beauty of its almost perfect imperfections can't really be computer generated. But in truth, the main reason I love hand-drawn animation so much is it's timeless. Sure, the blending of both CGI and hand-drawn artwork is awesome. I mean, we see it in one of my favorite Miyazaki films of all time, Princess Mononoke, as well as the one that we just watched, The Boy and the Heron. But when we talk timeless, I mean, just look at some of those old Disney flicks from the 30s. I mean, there's a reason the animation in Snow White still holds up today in the year 2024. Miyazaki spares no expense when it comes to animating his stories, and it shows in every film. Absolutely beautiful, absolutely brilliant. Next, let's get into the themes. Now at the start, I mentioned this film carried a darker tone than the majority of Miyazaki's films. Now I'll elaborate a bit more for you. Now yes, it's very common for Miyazaki's films to have a darker conflict or heavier subject matter surrounding its central characters, but in most of his films, the protagonist is the embodiment of positivity, and usually bring a certain light to the stories. Mahito, however, is not nearly as happy and jovial, and that is a constant throughout the film. The film deals with themes of loss and acceptance as Mahito copes with the death of his mother and struggles to adapt in his new environment. A true coming-of-age tale as we see him gradually mature as a person. The film also deals heavily with themes of creation and the power that it holds, almost serving as a love letter from its creator, whose continued perseverance and growth led him to imagine some of the most beautiful stories ever animated. The character writing is done mostly through Mahito, although I did think the rest of the cast was written terrific as well, but we do get to see Mahito, who struggles with his inner conflict and his insecurities, really emphasizing the importance of overcoming hardships in life, especially because the adventure acts as a journey of growth for Mahito. Mahito refusing the blocks from the wizard, not wanting to taint them himself, was such a beautiful moment, and honestly, conceptually, the whole idea of the building blocks that hold the universe in balance along with the sacred stone of creation, was just so freaking cool to me. I mean, I hope that's not just me, but I mean, I just thought that was so well done and just so cool. I just love that stuff. Much in that same respect, the universe is within the corridor of time. I thought just the idea of the corridor of time was absolutely awesome and just very well thought out conceptually too. I mean, just top tier. I especially like the small details within the world building, like for example, when the Parakeet King enters the wizard's garden with his subjects and they refer to the normal birds as their ancestors, tearing up witnessing the natural beauty of Mahito's reality. And then obviously you had the wartime setting. It's also a very common setting in Miyazaki's films, but that's just a parallel to his life. He lived through that. Yeah, that was obviously very apparent throughout the film as well, with the tobacco shortage and things of that nature. It was a very war-ridden city. Earlier, I compared the film to something like a Grimm's version of Alice in Wonderland, and that was not only because of the obvious, Wonderland that Mahito finds, but because almost everyone he meets is an alternate version of someone he knows in his reality, and I absolutely love that too. I mean, I am just coming off of watching an adaptation of Alice in Wonderland, like, not even a couple weeks ago, but I loved that. That was so cool, and that's instantly what it made me think of. The Boy and the Heron truly is a remarkable film, and I could not recommend it more. But I suppose there is still the elephant in the room. Is this truly Hayao Miyazaki's final film? Now, for those who don't know, it's not the first time Hayao Miyazaki has announced his retirement. Hell, it's not even the second. But in my honest opinion, at the age of 83, I dare say this very well may be. On top of that, with this film so heavily paralleling his life, like him and his father re-evacuating during the war and the loss of his mother, if this is his last go-round, it certainly seems fitting. And if that is the case, let me take this moment to thank you personally, because it's likely I wouldn't be the person that I am without your work. Thank you for everything, Hayao Miyazaki. The Boy and the Heron gets a 9.4 out of 10. As always, guys, get in the comments. I'd love to hear what you thought about the film. I really was dying to do this review in particular because a lot of people, I think, were kind of put off by the tone from this film. That's why I made it a point to really point that out. It wasn't like as, instantly received. I think over time people are starting to appreciate this film a lot more. But I think it wasn't as appreciated as like the more upbeat, spirited ways and, Castle in the Skies and things of that nature. It still has that same awe and adventure, but I think the overall aesthetic of it might have been a bit off-putting to some people. But I mean, I absolutely love this film, and after watching it and considering the fact that it might be Hayao Miyazaki's final film, was considering, hey, where does this rank, in my opinion, of all of his films all time? So that's a very interesting question in my opinion, and I'd love to answer it if you guys find it interesting. So get in the comments, let me know if you guys would like to see, maybe a list of every Studio Ghibli film, maybe ranked, or just Hayao Miyazaki's films, let me know, or whatever you want to see for the next review. But as always, guys, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.